What to look at today? Maybe I'll review a game today. Hey guys, Zibboyeye or just Zib is fine, and today...
Hello, Zib. It seems you're looking for a review once more. Perhaps you'll return to a series more than familiar to you. I promise my films will continue. You think it's over just because the last entry was titled Saw the Final Chapter, as well as Saw 3D and Saw 7? But most importantly, the final chapter. It's not over because of that. The reviews are not over. The review has just begun.
Hey guys, Zibboyeye or just Zib is fine, and today, we're back in familiar territory with Jigsaw. Released 7 years after Saw 3D, aka Saw 7, aka Saw the Final Chapter, Jigsaw was not just a return to the franchise, but a return to series roots as well. A mentality held throughout Jigsaw's production was a respect for the first film. Longtime series producer Oren Cools thought the series went too far into gore and needed to redefine itself as more intellectually focused.
I think in Saw 1 there was a lot more thinking rather than blood and gore. So we really tried to get back to Saw 1 in jumps, in scares, and a lot more logic.
The directors Michael Spierig and Peter Spierig agreed with this sentiment.
You know, that's what we're really trying to avoid is branding this as a torture porn movie. That's not what we're doing at all.
At the very first meeting we had with them, before the coffee even came, they said, we do not want this to be just all gore all the time.
As someone who is not fond of the series' turn after Saw 4, as well as a big fan of the original movie, I was excited for this film. So let's see if it lives up to expectations and take a look at Jigsaw. We start with the chase before cutting to the game. One thing I like about this movie is how quickly we get to Jigsaw's game. No opening kill, no investigation scene immediately after. I appreciate the sense of haste that I hadn't felt in the latter films of the series. The game consists of 5 individuals who are requested to present a confession in order to be set free. However, as none comply, they continue through their confinement to face a variety of trials. I enjoy the unique setting of the game. Compared to the empty space and bland rustic walls seen in Saw 5 through Saw 7, the wooden enclosure of the barn is a breath of fresh air along with other set pieces. Although Julie Berghoff of the first movie is my favorite production designer of the series, I admire the work done by Anthony Cowell here. It may not be as busy as Hackle's environments in Saw 2 through 4, but there's enough there to keep shots visually interesting. And per the director's request, the carnage receives significantly less glorification than previous entries. I like this because I believe the emphasis on horror and torture porn image the series became synonymous with deterred many from the franchise. Making Jigsaw a thriller is not only faithful to the original film, but also opens the series up to a wider audience. However, it seems the movie tried to substitute the shock of gore with jump scares. I think I would have rather a focus on bloodshed. A quick boo was never Saw, and the cheap scares result in more groans than screams. Speaking of groaners, there's a particular predictability with this film. For example, when this character quote-unquote dies, every other person gets explicitly maimed, making the ambiguity given to this character's death suspicious. It's too obvious this is gonna come into play in the third act. Another example is the structure of character meets their test followed by dying, reinforced by the second death of the film. This means you know characters like Mitch will die come time for his trial and diminishes suspense. And it doesn't help that the characters in the game aren't exactly, well, developed. One thing that benefited the first film was the time for conversation and idle banter Adam and Lawrence were given. However, the movie Jigsaw is always moving too fast. One trap, another immediately after, a short break that I do appreciate, followed by a trap and another right after. I wish the film took more breathers to allow for personality shaping dialogue, exchanges and whatnot. But as is, you don't care who gets minced. Similar to the first film, the characters in this game give embellished backstories.
We lost our baby!
Anna, tell me that this isn't happening.
I made a mistake.
Except where the first film had several scenes detailing the past that, come time for the truth, gave the reveal impact, this film contains hardly any. Anna only has 2 flashbacks before her reveal, and Ryan doesn't have any prior to his. The flashbacks are so short and few, the reveals built on them have about as much impact as a used pillow. Once again, the film cuts between the game and law enforcement. The characters this time around are Logan, the medical examiner as well as protagonist, Halloran, your arrogant, dirty cop, and Eleanor, Logan's assistant who seems a bit too excited to find these bodies on her table. As usual, the plot of The Outside World centers around police closing in on the game and Jigsaw. But with everyone who's held the moniker dead, we're left with the question, who's behind the game this time? We have a whodunit plot. Having started the series, this genre of story is something I've been begging for from Saw 5 through Saw 7, and I'm happy to see it return here. Although Jigsaw is a return to form in its mystery, it delivers to varying effect. It tries to mislead you into thinking John Kramer is still alive as the bodies keep piling up, but considering removing his victims from the game to display around town is not within John's MO, it mitigates the likelihood it was him. This damages the misdirection. The film sets up a lot of misleads, 3 to be specific: John, Eleanor, and Halloran. However, the evidence indicating Eleanor is too heavy-handed. The audience knows she won't be Jigsaw because it'd be too obvious. That being said, I did enjoy Eleanor as her character expanded on John Kramer's influence. She's an active member of a dark web Jigsaw fan site, acquiring designs and reproducing much of his work.
Eleanor? What is this?
It's called fan service, Logan. And we come to one of the worst parts of the movie.
Supposedly, John Kramer designed this trap for a game that took place before all the others. I built it myself. Rumor is, he built one.
None of Kramer's victims died in any device like this.
Maybe the bodies were never found.
It was at this point the foreshadowing weighed in a bit too heavy and spoiled the twist that the game was one no one had discovered and is taking place in the past. That wasn't the only thing that tipped me off something was unnatural about the game. No one seemed to know about Jigsaw or these tests.
Bastard, sick idea of a joke.
He said it was a game.
This is especially telling as it's unlikely for these murders to vanish out of public mind. Not only that, but in previous films, characters know right away who captured them.
I've seen you on television.
Jigsaw. This is what he does!
So, by halfway through the movie, we're one step ahead of the film. The twist itself causes some issues with the content of the game as well. So Jigsaw hooked up an HD TV playing digital video around 2004 when his later games used CRTs and VHSs. He even fitted his puppet with glowy eyes it never had thereafter. Wow, John really blew his budget on this game. The technology is used to convince the audience the game takes place in present day, but when it turns out it isn't, you realize just how out of place it all is. The devices Jigsaw uses result in anachronisms not just with the time, but with his other games. For example, John's games in the first movie were simple, they all took place in one room. The most engineered test wasn't even the room, it was the head-worn reverse bear trap. Yet the game in Jigsaw takes place before all that and is significantly more complex with pulling chains and a giant blender. And no, I don't think it's nitpicky to criticize such inconsistencies about the titular killer in a mystery, a story where everything should cohesively add up. The film tries to trick you once more into thinking John is alive. This would be an effective deceit if only the film didn't hit at the time the game was taking place so blatantly earlier. Also, it seems inappropriate for John to reveal himself here. The only other time John presented himself in the game was with Cecil. It makes sense for John to be present in this instance because the game was very personal to him considering Cecil murdered John's child. In the case of Jigsaw, however, Anna murdered her own baby, framing her husband for the crime. Meanwhile, Ryan's recklessness got his friends killed. Both horrible, yes, but neither hurt John. John has no personal stakes in these two. At the end of the day, John isn't revealing himself to them, he's revealing himself to mislead the audience. Another thing about John is the writers try to make his kidnappings more grounded. In the other films, you could ask, how does John know these people and their actions? However, since not addressing this question allows for a variety of characters with different issues in the game, this small detail is easy to overlook, but this film tries to explain John's knowledge. For example, Anna is John's neighbor, but I think the most egregious connection is with Mitch.
Selling a boy a motorcycle. You knew the brakes were faulty, and you delivered him to his end. He was my nephew.
It's just goofy to invent a relative to explain how John knows someone.
He was my
Father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate.
As for their final test, it's inspired by the first Saw. 2 people, a gun, and some riddlesome words.
Is your key to freedom?
Now, I both like and hate this scene.
He's very good at backwards!
The gun being rigged to reverse fire fits Jigsaw's belief as it punishes those willing to kill others, and the keys being in the bullet is a clever play on the preceding words.
You have to realize that you've been doing it backwards. I'm gonna give you an opportunity to turn it all around.
However, at the same time, this scene contradicts Jigsaw's beliefs. The games are meant for their player to earn their life. However, even though only Anna fired, the key for both is destroyed. So Ryan is punished for something out of his control. This is especially unrewarding when we see Ryan undergo the most change, even giving his leg to save 2 lives. Perhaps this was meant to mimic Adam's unfair death in the first movie, but considering John didn't know his key went down the drain, Adam's death appears as a mistake. There's no discrepancy in John's character. Whereas here, Ryan seems to earn his life, yet by John's design, he's punished. It betrays character motivation for the sake of a pseudo-tragic ending, as well as to avoid presenting a surviving character who has no presence in future events. As for how the game plays into the police plot, let's save that for the reveal. By the 3rd act, still on the hunt for Jigsaw, Logan and Eleanor point their suspicion to Halloran. This is a more convincing misdirection as we've heard of Halloran's violence. Not only that, but his intimidation and stalking during the climax gives a thrill, distracting from the mystery so you don't put the pieces together too soon. Eventually they all make it to the barn as Logan and Halloran are placed in the game and told to confess. After Logan is downed, we're left with Halloran.
People died because of me! Innocent people died because of me! I did it!
Then it's the reveal.
What is it? What are you...
Logan is the person you'd least expect, so the twist does in fact stun the audience. Even knowing this, a second watch, to a certain extent, is enjoyable. I noticed foreshadowing I hadn't before, such as Logan knowing the acid used on a victim before examining it.
It's hydrofluoric acid.
How'd you know it was hydrofluoric acid?
Saw a lot of it in Fallujah.
Another positive is that the plan is clever. Halloran ends up being used as a scapegoat.
No one will ever suspect it.
People died because of me! Innocent people died because of me! I did it!
However, some things end up making less sense due to the twist.
Follow my instructions exactly.
Yeah, because that's how it would sound. Who would have thought the new Jigsaw would be a master YouTube pooper?
The games have begun again, and they will not die. I will take care of dinner. You take care of
spaghetti.
As for his plan,
I've recreated Jigsaw's game with criminals from your failed cases. Found players just like the ones in the original game.
although he's doing this to punish Halloran, did this game specifically need to be imitated? All Logan needed was a few victims to trick the public into thinking that Jigsaw was alive, but instead of making his own game, Logan finds 3 people who all got off scot-free because of Halloran, who all committed similar crimes to those in the original game and all dying in similar ways presented in the movie? It's just too many variables that coincidentally fit his plan to be believable. Not to mention these victims somewhat resembling the players in the game to trick the audience. It seems unreasonable to mimic this game specifically, and outside of this guy who we'll discuss in a minute, none of the characters affect the outside plot whatsoever. A majority of the game exists to mislead the audience into thinking it's taking place during present day, but most of it's irrelevant in the grand scheme of the plot. It's primarily a red herring. Not falling far from the tree of Saw 5 through Saw 7, the game, the main draw of the series, is superfluous. As it turns out, Logan was placed in the game for mislabeling John's x-rays, prolonging John from realizing his illness.
John
John decided I shouldn't have to die over an honest mistake. He gave me a second chance.
Excuse me? So John spends who knows how long deciding who will be in the game, designing all the traps, building them, testing them, up to kidnapping these people, and the whole time John never thought once, well, you know, risking this guy's life over an oopsie would be an ass move. Until the very last minute. An issue I had with John's backstories in Saw 4 through 7 was that they tried to humanize a character whose plans always went perfectly. I wanted John to be portrayed as less than perfect so he could be more identifiable, but this doesn't make him look fallible, it just makes him look like a moron.
Because we'll speak for the dead.
After the effort to distance it from the latter half of the series, I was very disappointed to see this film resort to this trite trope. This writing into the past, leading to backstories that feel disingenuous to prior events, plagued the last 4 films, and Jigsaw fails to learn from the series' past mistakes. As for Logan, he provides Jigsaw with no new skill. Amanda was meant to continue the games after John's death. As a detective, Hoffman helped conceal evidence. Although John has done surgery before, Saw 7 tries to explain Lawrence was useful for operating on bodies. But with Logan, all we see is him lending some help to build a trap, which, as we can see from this movie, John doesn't need. Beyond the redundancy of this reveal in the series, this character, as an addition to Jigsaw's repertoire, is minimal.
Together, we built a legacy.
And they have the gall to say this character, who is never hinted at in any of the 7 prior films, who's in less than 15% of the series, who is a useless and extraneous addition to John's practice, is a part of Jigsaw's legacy. Lastly, Logan's motive.
Why was Edgar Munson free?
He was a murderer, but you were protecting him because he was your criminal informant. Edgar Munson killed my wife.
In terms of the event he's referring to it is about all we get throughout the whole movie. For such a formative event for our main character and twist killer, you'd think we'd be shown flashbacks to further understand him and build up the emotions that spurred his actions. However, we only get a few lines about it.
Hey, I'm sorry to hear about Christine.
Is that all she is? It's been 2 years since Christine passed. I wouldn't blame you.
Because of the lack of emphasis and time allotted for such an event, it's hard to empathize with Logan. They got the who done it, they got the how done it, but the why done it feels lazily slapped together through last minute dialogue. But no matter if you've seen all the movies, just some, one, or none, you'll find a number of issues in the reveal, leaving both Logan and the film a disappointing addition to Jigsaw's legacy. And that was Jigsaw, a film that, admittingly, I appreciate some of. The desire to return to an emphasis on the thinking and mystery of the first film is a direction I've been hoping for since the 4th movie, and to some degree, they achieved it. They had me engaged, I kept on guessing, well, until the middle of the film. On the other hand, the copy-paste backstory and largely superfluous to the plot game bring me back to the Saw sequels I've condemned before, and that is why I consider Jigsaw a poor soft reboot. The movie is designed to appeal to those new to the series, those who've only seen a few films, and longtime fans alike. However, the hackneyed execution of the twist villain, if anything, makes the movie worse for fans than anyone else. Because of this, I think the franchise needs a blank slate to further avoid the trappings of the previous films. And thankfully, it looks like Spiral, the Book of Saw, intends to do just that, taking place miles away in New York, hopefully with a killer who will set themselves apart from the rest. Cautiously optimistic for the next installment, I've been Zibboyeye, and thank you for watching. Zibbo, bye bye!